Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be discussing exactly what classes are and how to use classes in Java. So let's get into this. Basically, you want to go to your project. You can double click or use your two fingers to select the project, and then you want to go to new and then class. And we're going to just name this class example. Actually, we're not going to make a class yet. We're going to make a project. So let's close that, go back, go to new package, and then we're going to just paste that there. Class examples, finish. In that package, we're going to double click and go to class, and we're going to name this class example. Uh, Lowercase, and finish. Okay. So, what is a class? A class is really just a blueprint or a template that will later become an object. An object essentially lets us do things in Java. A class, when you think of a class, you really want to try to capture as much as realistic items or objects as you can within the confinements of that class. So, what do I mean by that? When you think of a class, you only want to have two main things. You want to have the variables, which are the characteristics and you know what the look and feel would be of that particular class, right? So you're building out the template, and then the behaviors of that object will be, the functions, what the class will be able to do. So what the class knows, which is the characteristics, right? And then what the class can do, which is the objects or the methods and the functions, right? So let's go ahead and just say public string name. And let's say public string public string, let's say color, right? And then, so this is basically attribute, right, of the class example. So the class example will have a name attribute, and then it will have a color attribute as well. Now, what will this class be able to do? That's when we create the methods, right? So we're going to do a void method. It's not going to return anything. We're just going to print out the the name and the color. So the action is going to be printing, right? So that's the behavior of this class, and that will be the behavior of the object as well. And then we have the color. It's another characteristic of the class, right? It's what the class knows. And then when we make that method, the method for printing color will also carry out the ability to print color. So let's go ahead and say public, let's say void print name method. And then this method is just going to print out the name, right? Print name. Let's see the uh, value of name is, and then we're going to do the same thing for color method. So we're going to print color. Just take this color, print it here. Okay, so we're going to make another class, and this And this class that we're going to be creating here is going to be containing our main method. So we're just going to name it the test class. So in order to execute a program in Java, you have to have a main method in that project. So I'm going to just create the main method here. And then inside of this main method, we're going to call, creating an object class example. So we're going to call this class example class, and then we're going to reference the things that it has visibility to and the things that it knows, right? So let's go back to our test class, and you can create an object by just using the class name. So in our example, the class name is class example. So this is the class name. And then you have to name your object reference. So let's just call it CLE, for example. And then you want to use the new assignment operator, because what's on the right side of this will be accessible through this variable here, this object reference. And then we want to use that class name again after using the new keyword. And then we use these two parentheses, which signifies we're creating a constructor. And then when we create a constructor, we're creating an object. So now that we have our object, we can use the reference to see what it knows. What does it know? It knows color, name. The other methods here are default. And then we have the class example methods as well. So we can access its characteristics, which is color and name, and we can access its abilities, its methods, its functions. So we can put that object to use. Now it's an object because we use the instructions to create an object that can actually carry out an action. So now we can print color, and then we can do the same thing here by using that same object reference and say, let's go to print name. So this object can print color and can print name. That's its ability. We defined its abilities in its template in this blueprint here. The abilities and characteristics were defined. So remember, guys, you cannot create a object without having a class, right? So now that we have our object here, we're not going to quite print out anything yet. Actually, let's go ahead and save it and print this out. So you should see null, and you will see, so for color and name, you're going to see null because we haven't assigned any values to these variables here. But that's a good thing. We want to see null. See, the value of name is null. The value of name is null. One, I should have changed the part here. So this should be color, right? So update that. And then we go back and we run it. So the value of color is null. The value of name is null. And we can create as many objects as we like, guys, from that same class, because we've already created that template or that blueprint for an object of how that object will work. So I can just copy that, and I'll just go here to line 14, and then we will just give it a different reference type. Doesn't matter what you name it. Typically, best practices, you want to name it something that will be readable and that makes sense with the program. But for this sake, we're just going to name it ASF. And now what we've successfully done is created a new object using a new object reference, the new keyword here. Okay, so what we're going to do is do the same exact thing, print color and print name. So we've successfully created a new object. And in this new object, we were able to access the abilities of that initial template. So these objects will behave the same essentially, even though they are completely different objects. So let me run that, and you're going to see 4 abilities or actions were taken. I can even go in here, guys, and we can create another class. Create as many classes as we need. And let's just call this example class 2. In this example class 2, let's give it its own characteristics and abilities. So this class here, we're going to say string student names. And we're going to give this a value. So student names or student name, let's just give it one student name. And let's call the student Frank. And then we're going to give it string student class. We're going to name the student class math. Okay. So string student name Frank, string student name math. This is just characteristics, right, of the example class 2. So now that we've kind of described it with characteristics, let's give it ability. So for this particular method, function, or ability, right, for the later to come object, we're going to name it public void, and let's name it student, name it return, or actually get student name. So this is just going to print out the student's name. Let's just say print student name to be right, clear, and we're going to sys out, control space bar, and we're going to say all strings have to go inside of double quotes, guys. That's just the rules. So the name of student that belongs to example class 2 is, and we're going to use the plus operator to add or concatenate the string here on our left to the variable value on our right. So student name Frank will go here. So this particular class has the ability or function to print out print student name. So it will essentially perform the action of printing out student name when this method is called. So we're going to do something similar using this characteristic here. So let's just copy and paste that. Let's just rename it to print student class. So we're going to just give a quick description here. The class student that belongs to the class of the student that belongs to example class 2 is, and then we put the student class. Paste that. Just format that so it looks a little cleaner. And then we save it. So now all that's left to do is go back to our main method. And as before, we can just reference the name of the class, give a name, a variable name. So let's just call it calling class 2 example. Use a new keyword and then parentheses behind the class name again. So we're now creating a constructor, which in the background creates an object for us. Now we can use the calling class2 example to actually call the actions that are associated with that object that we created from the class template or blueprint, right? So use the dot operator here, and now you can see student class string, name string, and then if we go down, we see the actions. Methods have the parentheses here, so we can print the student class. So let's do that, and then we can go and use the object reference here, use the dot operator, and we're going to print student name. So let's comment out lines 16 and 17. You can do so by highlighting and selecting Control backslash on your keyboard. Let's do the same thing for lines 10 and 11. Let's Control backslash. Now you should be able to see that we're going to get the printouts of these two methods here that were called from the actual class, but we create an object of that class so that we can put it to use. So let's just go ahead and run it. And now you guys will see those actions were able to take place. So the class of the student that belongs to example class 2 is math. The name of the student that belongs to example class 2 is Frank. And then what I'll do is I'll uncomment these by highlighting and Control backslash, highlighting Control backslash, and I'll save it and I'll print everything. As you guys can see, it works when you don't assign values to the variables of the template class here. So for an empty value for a string variable is null, an empty value for an integer variable or an int variable is 0, and then the default value for an empty Boolean variable is false. Okay, so you guys can see we can provide value here, and it comes out. We provide value in the class itself, which has access to those values, those characteristics and methods or functions. In we actually carry out calling it, create an object of it. We can execute it from another place, which was our main method slash test class here. So that's at a high level, very basic introductory of how classes are built and how objects are built using those classes. And thanks guys for watching the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.